Okay. Welcome back to Inklings Behind the Scenes. This is J.S. Bray from Mr. Bray Labs, and today I have my friend and very talented, very broad set of skills, Tyler M. Reed. Tyler, you want to say hello?
Hey, it's nice to be back, Jay. I'm really happy to be back on the channel and have my
Ab-
face animated again. It's very exciting.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's always fun to be animated, and like this is old school animation. I'm sitting there grinding frame by frame. No AI here. Oh gosh, that's true. I'm not using any AI, but yeah. So okay, we were talking a little before we started that you work for a company now called VP Nordic. And could you tell me what VP stands for? Are you a vice president or is it VP or
Yeah,
what?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good question. Yeah, Virtual Production Nordic. So it's a virtual production company in the Nordics. So Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark. So we focus on those areas offering virtual production solutions.
Okay. I'm going to sound stupid, but do you mean like remote virtual production? Is that okay?
Uh, no, it's on site. So right now the main focus is using the main technology that's used is LED panels. So kind of what if people watch like the behind the scenes of the Mandalorian and things like that, they
Oh
were kind of the
yeah.
first big series to do that. And then that really helped launch what is now virtual production around the world. A lot of companies have been wanting to emulate that. So it's using red LED panels. By the way, I'm gonna mix it up because in the
Yeah.
US we say LED, and then over here in Sweden we just say LED.
Oh,
So
LED.
you'll hear me say LED or LED, by the way.
Okay,
So
that's totally
um,
fine. You got to deal with
yeah,
the.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
I mean, we were talking a little earlier how you came and visit family out in Kentucky, and since I live in like outside of Nashville, you start to have to get the nomenclature. Like you just start saying the things like I start talking more Southern because my wife's from Kentucky, even though I'm from Oregon. So you just pick it up. So virtual production really means like the new definition of green screen. The fascinating thing because you said Mandalorian. Um, who copied the Mandalorian's style, which you may not know this. They copied that whole, just actually maybe give people an idea back. It used to be camera projection, 3D screens, actors doing all their thing. But now it's this new amazing technology, which we could probably go into, but now they copied it in the kids show, the new launch in Yo Gabba Gabba. Did you know that?
Oh no, I did not.
Yeah, yeah. So like I worked on the series. A colleague of mine, he's been working on the series forever, and I came along as like a technical director, kind of fix some animation stuff. But anyways, yeah, they were doing the same thing on Yo Gabba Gabba. So it went from Mandalorian to now like Yo Gabba Land, and it's awesome. I think it's a really cool thing. Now that we've connected some dots, my brain's firing. I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
Um, that's
exactly.
awesome.
Yeah, but I mean to kind of jump in. So before using like LED panels, you would use green screen, but you could also go ahead and have sort of the environments built so you could see in screen what it was going to look like. So you could be filming in front of a green screen, but at least have that visual reference of what it was going to look like in post. Because a better name for sort of virtual production is really in-camera visual effects. So in essence, you're
Okay,
bringing the visual effects on set. So something that was primarily done in post-production is now being done in production, being done in pre-production to be played during production. So
okay.
really, it's kind of a way to an interactive green screen. So now instead of it being a green screen, though, it's just a video wall, and you can actually sort of really feel like you're interacting with the
Oh,
environment.
that's cool. That's where you and I have totally bridged the technology of animation. So I mean, as a lover of animation since a little kid, I remember I was fascinated by those Ray Harryhausen films and like those classic, like they're the King Kong or the dinosaur, like all these kind of crazy stuff. And they used what was like the proto version of this new type of in camera. It's now splintered off and then come back together because those visual effects, that's animators are there, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, exactly. Oh yeah,
right.
I mean,
So
they're artists. There's artists
yeah,
coming together. Yeah, and it's really
yeah,
cool. It's also bringing in the gaming. It's a lot of skill set from the gaming industry to the film industry
yeah.
because a lot of the tools that are used, like Unreal Engine, which people know
Oh
best
yeah.
for like Fortnite and things like that. So and so it's really mixing a lot of skill sets that are used in the game because you're building and almost like these three-dimensional worlds also with the visual effects. So these great sort of talents and skills also coming together. So it's really cool to get those different kind of creatives together in
That's
this
awesome.
this technology.
Yeah, I mean, as a person who, I mean, now, like, I don't put 3D typically in my production pipeline because I have a for two reasons. One is the economy of it because it's like a huge thing. It's a huge budget. You got to have like a computer that is basically cost a mortgage. So,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
exactly.
but I actually taught for multiple years, for about 4 years at the university level, like visual, like VR and Unity and Unreal and that kind of stuff. Like creating this sort of asset stuff. It's more like I play a teacher instead of actually do it in my professional atmosphere. But it is really amazing what you can do with VR type technology, immersive technology, the blending between talents and animation. And I want to like ask just this is the first of the two curveballs I want to throw at you.
Okay.
It's a virtual production, man. What does that cost? Like if somebody wanted to get into doing this, like that's got to be. It sounds expensive.
Right. So it is, and then it becoming isn't, and not because technology is becoming better and usually that becomes cheaper, but a lot of times after the Mandalorian came out, a lot of studios I think were like, oh, we want to have that same thing, and so it was this very curved, almost 180 to even curved plus dome LED wall setup. But that was designed specifically for that character,
Yeah,
because mainly because of his helmet. So it really needed that. But for anybody else, for many scenarios, you can just use a flat wall. So it's
okay,
becoming cheaper because a lot more companies are realizing, oh, I don't have to build this big giant setup and then bring people in to use it. I can just
totally.
have my LED panels inside a case or something and then set them up based on the production. And then that alone will save a lot of money. And that's sort of what
Okay,
that's how VP Nordic started out there. It's just, it's like, how do we, in essence, how do we bring virtual production to you instead of making you come to us, which then means you have to cover all of our overhead and our big studio.
yeah,
So that does save money. Now, I'm not saying that it's, not, that it's not inexpensive because it can be expensive, but
yeah.
you know what? There's ways to even play around. I mean, I think I've seen some random TikTok videos or something. It's pretty fun. Like somebody will put on this face helmet and then they'll sit right in front of their TV, and then they'll have, a star, like a
Yeah.
space look on the TV. And that, in essence, and if you're filming that person and they're in front of that TV there and you get it just right, you can, make it look
You can
like
fake
virtual
it.
production. So
Yeah.
in essence, I mean, you can't, just like with anything, I mean, there's ways to make it, to fit with your budget. And of course it can get bigger, but it is, I mean, it can be an expensive endeavor, but we, at least with BP Nordic, we're trying really hard to bring it to much more to indie films to have this technology for their films. So I think people would be surprised by how inexpensive it can be in terms of maybe what their expectations are.
Well, that's cool. I mean, it like that. That makes sense. I mean, because it's the evolution, and for those folks listening, and we get all types, because it has a similar origin to like the way that we used to shoot special effects and like the classic stop motion films, the classic monster movie films. There are always sort of like DIY ways to do something like this. I have a huge background in stop motion animation. And so I'm not a stop motion animator, okay? But I would go back, I would work in like rig removal and color correction. I work with Hallmark and stuff like that. And I kind of fix that stuff up. And it's a very similar sort of mindset of like, okay, going in there and you want to have a really good previs so that you can actually don't have to work so hard in the post, but post has this bottleneck. And the idea in what you're describing and which we worked with Gabba was to really eliminate the bottleneck to where it's an even like level of work instead of just the posts getting kind of just grilled. I mean, I remember spending just 13-hour days just grinding and grinding. My eyes are just like, just crusty. Can't like if I have to color correct another frame of this stop motion puppy, I'm going to lose my mind, and that is what I believe you're trying to get rid of with this virtual production movement, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, in a way, exactly. If you're talking about just like an intense bottleneck, stressful
Yes.
post workflow, if you bring it into pre-production, it helps so much, and actually that saves you a lot more money. And try to get rid of that saying, fix it in post.
Yes. Fix and
if
post.
if you if you if you plan it in prep, you don't have to fix it in post.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know,
That's cool.
planning is, I think, you know, just with that too, that's kind of the cool thing that's happening with virtual production. You have no choice but to do it in pre-production because you have to bring these assets onto production. But
Yes.
so what that does is you have to really think a lot more in prep. And I think even if you're not doing virtual production, the greatest thing a filmmaker can do for themselves is to spend so much time just planning and preparing and prepping on the production. I know it's so exciting to like jump in and start
Oh yeah.
filming and like, you know, like, okay, I got my script, I got my cast, and I got like locations and I know what I want to do. Like, let's just go film.
Yeah.
And it's much better to just, you know, exhaust through the ideas and the stories and the concepts and the blocking and all those things and figure out really how you want to make your film. Because I believe that the more you prepare, actually, the more spontaneity you allow on set. Because a lot of times when you want it, you think, oh, I want to be spontaneous,
Spontaneous.
spontaneous. There we
Of
go.
course. Yeah. Ta-da!
I
No, it's
want to
cool.
be spontaneous. And so, so you're like, so it's like, I just want to go in and do it. I'm going to see how things unfold. But actually, what you may not realize is you're kind of just chasing yourself there. You're chasing to get to that product. Whereas like if you're really, really prepared and planned out, then when you're in it, it's so much more easy to be spontaneous because it's like, well, you know what? I know how this wants to be, but now actually to make this fit better, the story I've been unfolding, I think I'm going to try it this little direction instead now. I
That's
feel
cool.
like more prep allows for more spontaneity.
I do agree with you. I do think that it's the weird balance between being organized and being creative. And I put those two against each other because I know when I'm organized, I'm not too particularly creative. So like, this is why you can only see so much in my office because everything else is trash because I'm being creative. And then when it's all like all organized, you know, I'm trying to get my stuff together. You need the sort of that different flow, like you said. My goodness. If you can pull back the creative process, I mean, how many times when you're in the midst of it and you're feeling overwhelmed, you're like, oh man, that new shiny thing sounds so much more, it sounds lighter, it sounds enticing, it sounds great. But that's because you're not focusing on the minutia of getting it done because you found a part that's uncomfortable. Um,
Yeah.
and, and I think I think that's probably the wisdom in creating systems like VP Nordic is doing, creating systems that allow you to be creative throughout the life cycle of your film instead of just at certain intervals. That's cool. So, anyways, I thought that's pretty cool, man. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Um, all right, curveball number two.
Okay.
I figured just throw these ones at you because I see I like mentioned this a bunch. All right, what is it with people in the film industry and what it doesn't matter what it is. For some reason, $1 million seems like the magic number. When someone says a budget, why is 1 million a magic number? It's like a
It's really
million
funny.
dollars.
I feel like, yeah, well, I feel like because anything, I think it's this idea, and I don't know why exactly, but I think anything over, in essence, the, when you go to like the hundred thousandths, like the moment
Yes.
you hit over that, you feel like, oh, okay, now this is a real indie film. And this is
Mm,
like the psychology behind it. I think when you're like, oh, I'm making a $750,000 film, it's like, oh, that just feels so small. It feels
mm,
still so indie. You know, but if I'm making $1 million indie film, it's like, okay, I'm stepping up in the big leagues. I've got, you know, I'm hitting
yeah.
the $1 million number. And I think that's one of the reasons why people say that number. I also think, well, I mean, a big reason I think there's just, they haven't really budgeted. So, I
Yes.
mean,
Yes.
obviously, no film is ever just a round number. Now, of course, you say around like, oh, I'm making a $2 million film, but that could be $2,117,252, or you know,
Yeah.
1.977 blah blah whatever. But you'll say a $2 million film. But I think they'll say $1 million, and it could be a $1.5 million film, or it could be a $890,000 film. But they just kind of say they assume a million. I think it's just this idea that I think for them, they believe they'll be taken more seriously. I think sort of if you take yourself more seriously, like I'm making this $1 million film, and I don't really know why that came about. I mean, I don't. I think it's better to brag about I made this $250,000 film that looks like $1 million or looks like $2 million
Oh
or
yeah.
feels like it, and it's not even look, because I kind of want to throw, I shouldn't, I don't want to put too much emphasis on that, because I think you
Yeah.
put too much idea of like, oh, how does it look? But the story, I mean, does it feel like $1 million story or $2 million story? Does the audience leave there and think like, as long as they feel like they've gotten something from the film, it doesn't matter. They do not care if your film is, $700,000 or $7 million. And as we know, I mean, there are $250 million films that flop. And then how many great films come out every year? That's, just $1 million or $2 million, and people love it and go crazy about it.
That's
So
true.
I feel like I just went woo all wind
Well,
you
no,
right there with this.
but
But
I was a curveball. You're allowed to
yeah.
wheeze off because I often see you talk about it, and it is something that I don't know why the $1 million sounds like a magic number. I don't know if it's that BNL song, if I had $1 million.
Yeah.
So but
Exactly.
I think the other thing is that, because filmmakers, these days, because we can do everything ourselves, we feel like we have to have everything figured out. And this is just an assumption. But because the point of entry can be so low, you can have a camera or a laptop or whatever, and you can be a
Yeah.
filmmaker, you can be an animator. I mean, goodness, I have a free animation school I put up online. I've had a lot of students go through it, and they'll email me, stuff like that. I did it years ago for some clients. But if you want to learn how to do animation, you can learn it. And there's tools available to you. You just have to put in the time. But that also has the second burden. The other problem is you forget that it took a huge team to do these films, not because they were just lacking the skills. Oh, now I have the skills. It's because there are so many that not one person can actually have them all. I mean,
Yeah.
it's impossible for you to have everything that takes to make a film to do it successfully. It is. It's just, and maybe the $1 million just sounds like with $1 million, I can afford all the friends I need,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's not
exactly,
true.
exactly.
So
It
anyways,
could
yeah.
even be like a lot of times too when I say it, it's like, oh, I have $1 million, I'm looking for investors. Like I'm making
Hmm.
$1 million film and now I'm looking for investors. And that usually that word comes after investors. And so what I wonder is if they think, and from their point of view, that like, okay, an investor won't take me seriously unless I have this kind of budget. But like, oh, $1 million. Like, if it's less than that, maybe they don't think this is a serious film. But that's not how investors are looking about it. What they take seriously is how seriously you take their money.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you need to be, instead of just saying, I'm making $1 million film, it's like, I am making, I say $1 million, but it's actually 995,000, whatever. And this is why, because I did a detailed line item budget and this is what it's going to cost. And I'm not asking you for the $1 million. I've actually went ahead and raised 30,000 through crowdfunding, and I found some local
Hmm.
sponsors to give me 25,000, yada, yada. So actually all I need is, and then $200,000. And so I think it's maybe this idea that investors will believe in I think filmmakers maybe believe that investors will believe in their film more if it seems like it has a higher number, if it feels like it's more real.
That makes
Uh,
sense. I mean,
you
I
know,
think the optics are a huge thing. You gain a lot of followers, and somehow somebody thinks that you're rolling in the revenue,
yeah,
and I'm like, that's not true. I mean, because Google's got to pay itself first, even if you throw it up
exactly.
on YouTube. And I'm not against people doing things on YouTube, but I'm telling you, you can have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. It may not mean that you earned one nickel, and that's just it's just the optics of it. And gaining investors are not like bankers, which is a good and a bad thing. Because a banker, you already know they want the financial projections, they want the LO, they want the letter, like the offer letter. And you could give these things, but investors are people sometimes. Sometimes you go into VCs and there are a bunch of people who've lumped their money together with somebody who's smart, who they trust to do something with their money. But I'll tell you, investors are just as fickle and flighty and emotional and about how they feel about stuff. So there's just no real, I don't know, there's no real perfect advice for everybody when it comes to that. But that's just my
No,
experience.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, that's the hard thing. I mean, I think a lot of people want a very specific roadmap to how
Mm.
to, I think in anything in life, really. But I mean, but in filmmaking, it's like, how do I get my movie made? I'm like, what you doing? It's
Anyway,
endless. And anyway, yeah, exactly. I
and,
mean,
and,
there's a
and,
lot of, and the route you take could be very different than the route I take. And if I were to replicate your route, it may fail miserably. And if you'd replicate my route, then maybe it works perfectly. And, but you never, like, that's the thing. And not that one is right and one is wrong. It's just one may be right for that person at the right time. And
Yes.
that's something I like to try to say a lot. Sometimes it's just about the right people at the right time. The thing,
Yeah.
and that's hard too. You kind of think like, why isn't this working? It's like, well, maybe it's just the project isn't right now. Or maybe, you're just not, or the people you are talking to are right, but the timing isn't right. Or, or maybe you're not talking to the right people. And that's the hard thing. So a lot of things are out of your control too. I mean, you just have to keep persevering and keep going through it, but also accept that there's so much that's out of your control.
That's absolutely true. I mean, like, we could probably start butting it off, but because it's so much we could talk about, but I just wanted to like kind of
Yeah.
mind this for a moment. You're absolutely right. There is an old story, like a long time ago, I was actually working at this orphanage and this person came and they shared a message and they were asking about how to kind of like, how to break in to something you want to do. And he gave the story of a king, his old king who was trying to sack this city. And the king had done his, hey, whoever sacks the city can marry my daughter, that sort of thing. Okay. But we're talking a 1,000-year-old story. And so the guy that broke into the city snuck in through the sewers. Okay. And so the lesson is, how do you break in any way possible? Any way possible. So it doesn't matter if it's YouTube or if it's, if it's working as a grip on your friend's student film. I mean, any way possible, you have to be tethered to the industry in such a way that you just see it as just one opportunity. You're a student and you're looking for more ways. And then I think that to me, that's the right growth mindset that helps you kind of frame film, because you have to love it, but at the same time, you can't. There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee.
No,
So.
exactly. And know that we always hear about the big successes, even the indie big successes, but 99% of us are just gonna be making films that most people won't hear of. But what matters is that you enjoy it and you're happy and you find the audience you want to find and you're connected with those people. And then, I think it's just figure out what you want out of life as a whole. Because sometimes it's like, I want to be this big filmmaker. And that only the tiny percentage of people get to be up so high. And I think everyone wants to aim for that though. And sometimes I think there's a lot of disheartening feelings when it's like, I'm not getting there. And you're like, but is this even worth pursuing? Because all you're doing is looking at this thing way up here. When it's like, it's worth pursuing if you love it. And like, can you put food on the table? Can you pay for rent? Can you buy your kids some clothes? Do you have the people watching your movies, even if it's only 10 people, watched it and liked it? I mean, if you can get it funded and make a little money and do it again, then just do it again. Don't worry about if it's going to take you to this, sort of high success level. Figure out what matters to you most out of your creative journey, and then plan on that. Make a plan for that.
Well, that's absolute sage advice, Tyler. I really enjoy that, and because I resonate with that. I think removing your idols is important, and what I mean is, this is like, so I say this as a person who has been doing this a long time for the love of it. I got fascinated with art when I was very young, but I would do it, and because I have done it without making any money at all. It's like, it's what I would do. It was what I would do. But there's a part where you have to remove your idols. And but it's when you go along, you start comparing yourself to a Disney or towards a Spielberg, or these people that they may have been your inspiration or even your heroes or people you still like look up to in many ways, but know that they had their own journey. And because they had their own journey, their successes does not take away from your success. You will in some ways be kind of standing on their success if you are successful, because they've taught you things. But there are certain things I think that I'm just going to get this, like, there are certain things that as filmmakers we need to avoid, or just storytellers. And I want to give like just one, and then I'd love to hit your thoughts, and then maybe we can wrap this up. So this is something that I've noticed that scares me as a father, as a filmmaker. There's this wave of people doing dangerous things for attention, because they think that the attention equals success. That bothers me. people eating themselves to death, people doing all sorts of ridiculous things for attention because they think the attention is going to garner some sort of like, now I'm a star. Eliminate that completely. Because if that's between you and your success, then you don't know what success is. That's my thought. What's your opinion about some of the evils of what we should watch out for?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. I don't think there's too much to add with that. I mean, that's 100% true. I mean, there's no reason to hurt yourself for this idea of success, and to try to reach those levels because a lot of times it's just instant attention. It's not going to give you any kind of longevity in your career. You're highly doubtful it'll give you any kind of financial support. So yeah, you may get massive attention. You may have something that goes viral or this, that, but most of the time, any of those things that happen, nothing happens after that. Like it doesn't just instantly parlay into a career of stuff now. So there's no reason to put that kind of effort into it. And actually, I kind of want to just
Yeah,
sort of
sure.
piggyback on that too. Something I see, especially like on TikTok and Instagram and things, and people are showing these crazy cool shots they got in very dangerous ways.
Oh my
And,
goodness.
they're hanging on the side of a truck or this or that. And it's like no film, no project you're doing is worth trying to get that kind of shot. And if you don't have the budget to properly do it safely, then don't do it because, change the scene, change that little bit of essence of the story because it's not worth doing. No one is going to notice. And maybe it looks cool behind the scenes, but no one's watching it thinking, I wonder what kind of cool way they film this. And I think there's a
Oh,
lot of that
yeah.
happening. It's really, really dangerous. And a lot of people have been hurt and even killed on film sets. So it's really important to not take undue risk just to get a shot,
Oh
just
goodness.
because you think
Yeah.
it's going to look cool in the film, because it's not going to honestly, it won't make a difference in the story and the overall film. So don't risk your lives or just don't even, not just risk your life, but risk any kind of, injury to get a shot. It's not worth doing.
And we don't, unless you have a Jackie Chan in your back pocket. So, and good insurance. I mean, there's a certain degree of like, yeah, there's reasons why there's these liability issues. There's all this sort of stuff that comes to play. I want to give the other side to that. So the other side to that, and I agree with you totally wholeheartedly, don't sacrifice your body, your mental health, your person for your film. That does not make you, being a martyr for your art, okay, unless you're doing a good thing, like you're doing a documentary that's exposing some evil, you're doing some grand thing, please stop being a martyr for your art. Know that it's a process. But in the animation world, and I'm going to probably upset some people by saying it, but it's incredibly unhealthy. It's incredibly unhealthy. And the studios before I started my own studio, it was like basically a fridge full of junk food. Cause see, like, I mean, I'm a healthy weight now, but I mean, I'm about 180, but I used to be well over like 300 pounds, type 2 diabetes. And I'm sitting there eating candy bars, pounding Red Bulls while I'm trying to finish a shot, working, like I said, 13+ hour days, sitting on my keister. That's not healthy for you. Like it's not healthy. And I say this because a lot of America, we kind of push back on this. But again, your body, the health that you take is important. Your health is important. And so there's another, like a lie, but I know this is kind of preachy, but I just think that we might as well just kind of pull back the curtain. What's your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you take care of yourself, so then you take care of your body so you can take care of your art. I mean, don't sacrifice your body for your art because two things are going to happen very quickly. You're going to run out of health and you're going to run out of the ability to make art. And then it doesn't matter anymore anyway.
You're right.
So
You're right.
you might as well take care of yourself. And then if you take care of yourself, you take care of your art. And ironically, and as you just talked about, being overweight, but then losing weight, as you get healthier, you get a lot more clarity.
Yes.
You start to see, you feel like you become more creative. Like
Yes.
when you start being healthier, it really opens up. I mean, it's so easy to be stressed and be tired. I mean, I have 3 kids and I have these jobs and I'm
Sure.
doing everything else, but it's like, but I do the best I can to take time to meditate, to
Yes.
exercise daily, even if it's just 10 minutes, something just to, and then I feel it helps me feel so much more clear and then about the work I want to achieve. And, and like, I love writing. I don't share any of my writing. I just do it as a way to kind of like creative writing. Like I'll write screenplays and I'll work on my own things just to kind of get my creative juices flowing.
Oh, that's cool.
And I, but if you're tired and you're lethargic and you feel worn out and it's hard to be creative. So it's important to take care of yourself also, because you want to have a great life of creating your art. And so in order to do that, you also have to have at least a decently healthy life.
You're absolutely right, Tyler. Yeah, thank you so much for just for being on here. I think we have to wrap up now. I'm hearing my baby. We're talking about kids.
Yeah, of course. Exactly.
But I will say this, you as a creative, $1 million is not a magic number. Utilize, new technology, check out VP Nordic. I truly believe that, if you want to create good art, you do need to take care of yourself. I meditate and pray and exercise every day. And I do that because it's important to feed your spirit as well as your body and your mind. If you don't, it's going to wear out on you. Like something's good. Like this car doesn't run forever, man. It doesn't matter which one it is. Eventually, like the lights will show off and it'll be maybe mental illness because you haven't been doing anything good for yourself. And that's another thing in itself. Perhaps we should talk about, being healthy filmmakers some other time, but, this is a good start. So Tyler, before I let you go, is there any last little piece of advice that you'd like to give everybody?
I don't know. Like this whole thing was riddled with advice.
I know.
I don't know. Just enjoy what you do, but know that you're gonna have hard times. And something I try to say a lot is filmmaking is a collaborative industry. So find people you really connect with. There's all kinds of people. So if you feel like you don't get along with them, don't worry about trying to stick around just because maybe they have some money or access. Just find the people that make you feel good and inspire you to create, and that matters as much as taking care of yourself. Take care of your connections and friendships too, because those things are what's going to help you actually get the art made.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tyler. I agree with you. No sense, at my group, I have a zero diva, tolerance. So, if someone gets a little too self-important, because this is a communal art form, right? And you need to see that there's a restorative power to that. A long time ago, when I used to play the music, we used to call it, when we play as a band, we call it group therapy. And there's a sense of like you are kind of doing a group therapy as you work on this project together. And it should feel good. Tyler, thank you so much again. Thank you everyone for listening. And I thank you. Just please continue to tune in. We just so much appreciate your support in this community. And I hope you all have a blessed day. Thanks, buddy.